I think Christians in particular need to make room for civil debate. And I think most Christians are nice people and they don't like conflict. But I think if the conflict comes to you, you have to decide, am I gonna battle heroically, or am I gonna shrink into the back and say, oh, I don't want to get involved in that?
Eric, back in the ancient days when you attended Yale, media was different than it is today. How have you seen media change over the years?
Well, back in those days, we had the old Edison wax cylinders. Just kidding. No, I was at Yale in the 80s. And what has happened, I'll tell you, this is a big part of God's calling on my life. The media has always been kind of leftist and kind of secular. They don't do God. They don't understand God. That has been changing because media itself has been changing. You know, you can now via the internet, via cable, and all kinds of other media, you can access things that weren't accessible. When I was growing up, and you had 3 networks, you had PBS, you had a local program. That was it. You're not going to get a great variety. Today, it is possible for people coming from our point of view, politically more conservative, radicals for Jesus. It's more possible for us to speak into the culture or to hear from people who think the way we do. I mean, we've seen that with news, right? Because you have all these conservative news outlets. But when it comes to faith, when it comes to the culture itself, we're still taking baby steps. And one of the things that I want to do is do a late night talk show. We've seen Johnny Carson, we've seen Letterman, we've seen all those shows. They've gotten more and more kind of hostile to faith, I would say. And I think that we need that. I think people want that. And we're just beginning with shows like yours and with what I'm doing to begin to speak to that part of America that felt for many years people aren't talking to me. I have to kind of take what I can get.
Eric, you talked a little bit about the news, and so many of us are just riveted watching the news to find out what in the world is going on in our world. And we're finding fewer and fewer places that we can trust because it seems like the news is turning into opinions and we're having to struggle to understand the difference between the two. What happens well, first of all, what is real news as opposed to somebody's opinion? And what happens when we start to combine those things?
What we're really talking about is freedom, right? We're talking about the ability to live in a free culture where I am able to get information from a variety of sources and make my own decision on what I think is happening, right? We used to be able to trust news. When Walter Cronkite came on, there was a time in America when, generally speaking, people trusted the news, they trusted their doctors, but things have changed. I mean, listen, doctors were telling you, hey, you can smoke cigarettes. They were doing ads for cigarettes in newspapers and magazines in the 1950s. As time has passed, I think people have begun to realize I need to think for myself. There are some sources that I can't trust. So we're sort of experiencing a revolution where many Americans are aware that if the government says something, they may need to check the source. They may need to say, I want to talk to somebody who says that's completely untrue. What's interesting to me is that is healthy American freedom. But there are people, usually people in power, who say, we don't want that kind of diversity. If you say something we don't like or that contradicts us, we want to shut you down. My entire show, the Eric Metaxas show, was taken off of YouTube because I had the temerity to speak to a liberal feminist, Naomi Wolf. She was in my class at Yale. She's not a Christian. She's not politically conservative, but she had a different view on vaccine passports. And because of that, they completely took off our entire program. And I thought, no matter what you think of the issues, that's a chilling thing in the United States of America. But there are people that they say, look, we've had some power. We don't want to lose our power. And if you step out of line, we're going to try to crush you. But the funny thing is, Kirk, this happens over and over in history. They did this to Galileo, right? It wasn't really the church. I mean, I write about this in my book, Is Atheism Dead? There were a number of people that had a point of view. They were sort of the Aristotelians when Galileo starts talking about it doesn't look like the Earth is the center of the solar system, they weren't interested in why do you say that? Their answer was, hey, shut up or we'll throw you in prison. People in power always have the temptation. And if you're a believer, you understand there's original sin, right? People are tempted to cling to power and to oppress people who don't have power. We're seeing it in the media today. I personally am excited. I think God is at work. I think there's a lot of alternative media popping up, but we are in a kind of a war right now because there are some people that don't like it, and we have to be brave and courageous and simply speak the truth as God allows us.
And Eric, you're one of those brave and courageous people, and I thank God for you. How do we, with our differing opinions in a free society like America has been, and I hope that we continue to resecure, how do we differ with one another without dividing over things with one another? I've seen you respectfully talk to people who have different opinions, but I've seen you interviewed by others on other networks who have differing opinions, and they want to cut you in half because you don't agree with their opinions. What's the trick?
It's kind of funny that you say cut you in half. I'll tell you why. I always think of, in Scripture, the story of Solomon and the baby, right? There are two women who come and they say, that's my baby. No, that's my baby. No, that's my baby. And Solomon, he has great wisdom. He says, well, we'll solve the problem. Why don't we just cut the baby in half and we'll give half to each of you, right? Well, guess what? The real mother says, don't cut the baby, take the baby. I don't care if I don't get my baby, just don't harm the baby. But the woman who is trying to steal the baby says, no, go ahead, cut the baby in half. In other words, this spiteful attitude. When you have people really interested in truth, you can tell that they are the ones that they don't mind disagreement. It's the people that say, we cannot abide, we will not abide disagreement or dissent. You already know that there's trouble. In other words, you don't even need to hear what their point of view is. When they're trying to crush dissent and telling you, hey, shut up, you know right away, wait a minute. If you're telling me to shut up, that I can't speak, that I shouldn't speak, I already am tipped off that I'm not interested in what you have to say because you're not interested in what I have to say. And I think that we have to be honest. There are limits to civility. If somebody says to me, if I say something they don't like, I'm a bigot or I'm a racist, it's game over. There's no longer a conversation. And I think we're even seeing that in the churches. I think Christians in particular need to make room for civil debate. You can disagree on things, but when you start canceling people, when you start saying that guy can never have his voice heard, we need to get rid of him. And I think most Christians are nice people and they don't like conflict. But I think if the conflict comes to you, you have to decide, am I going to battle heroically, or am I going to shrink into the back and say, oh, I don't want to get involved in that? Sometimes the Lord brings us to a place where we're forced to get involved. I think of my hero, William Wilberforce. He battled against the slave trade. Tons of people, sort of Christians, were saying, keep your politics out of religion and keep your religion out of politics. And he said, what kind of a Christian would I be if I don't bring my faith, which says that God is no respecter of persons. He died for everyone, including the Africans that are being enslaved. What kind of a Christian would I be? What kind of fake gospel would I be preaching if I don't speak up for them? And if you want to call that political, call it political. God demands that I speak up for my brothers and sisters. The same thing happened with Bonhoeffer. People in the church said, why are you being political? You know, Romans is clear, obey the authorities. And he said, no. That's not what it says. You're misreading what the scripture says. The scripture demands that I be a voice for the voiceless. And then if you want to call it political, call it political. But I fear God, and doing nothing and sitting on my hands and playing it safe, I fear that God will judge me for that. And you should too. So we're living in complicated times. And by God's grace alone, I try to say these things wherever I go because we're in a tough spot.
Hi, I'm Kirk Cameron, and thanks for watching the Kirk Cameron on TBN YouTube channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. A couple of things. Please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so that you're notified every time a new video is posted. And be sure to share your takeaway in the comments and invite a friend to join the conversation.